have some fun with it. Say stuff that's on your mind. Be yourself, because no one else can be yourself. No one else can say how you say it, if that makes sense. No one else can put those words out there the way you do it. Everyone has their superpower in being themselves. Welcome to the Red Print, your wellness podcast. My name is Daanish.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Neil.
Today we're going to be talking about building friendships at university, including
reflections on social anxiety,
why you might feel awkward meeting new people,
and giving you steps to help overcome these situations. Welcome to the Red Print, your wellness podcast. The topic we're about to get into before we go into the specifics. How did we come up with it? How did you come up with it, Neil? What was your thought process behind it?
So with this one, my thinking was, over the last few weeks, what we've been speaking about is things that quite individual things about how you deal with your time, or how you deal with you encountering pressure, or how you deal with your own motivation. So it's been quite kind of internally focused, and that's really important. And I think we kind of have to start from there. I was just thinking, like the idea of emotional intelligence. With emotional intelligence, you start at the, self-awareness and being aware of who you are. But that there also is that element of it's about understanding how you're interacting with other people, and this idea of sociability or being social. It's something that actually, when people come to university, might be, this might be the first time that people have actually been meeting other folks since school, maybe even, like that you might have made friends in school, you might have had exactly the same friends through A levels, whatever, and coming to university might be a really, really big difference. So whilst you've got all of the things of studying modules and making sure that you're doing well in those things, actually that element of interacting with other people, I think, is really worth unpacking, because it can be quite an anxiety-inducing place to be. When you're surrounded by other people who you don't necessarily know, it can seem like quite a gargantuan task to say, right, I've got to make some friends. And especially when it's university, the romance of university, people say, oh, you'll make your best friends, you'll make friends for life when you're at university, you're going to meet so many different people. For most folks in the first little while, it probably doesn't feel like that. So I think that can be quite an overwhelming thing. So I think it's worth unpacking this idea of sociability, social anxiety, and what it means, and the relative importance of it. To what extent do you feel like folks might be, if they're either in their, really early in their first years of studying at university, or even as they're going through and they change into years, to what extent do you think people might feel these kind of anxious thoughts around socializing? Do you think that is a particularly common thing?
I'd say for me, it was as soon as I came into uni, but luckily, but I was blessed to have like great people around me at that time who were like-minded as well, and we all clicked straight away. Like, I heard stories of people sharing, the flats with people who they didn't particularly get along with, like the stuff they idealized in their head wasn't happening. Like, for example, the kitchen was just a quick example. The kitchen was really messy, and they didn't want it to be really messy, and then there's just like fights internally about that. I think, okay, so back to the point. So first years, all the way to third years, I think, because depending on when you might perhaps meet the right people for you, like it can shift from as soon as you start, like you might have found great people, or it might even go all the way up to the final year after your placement year, then you find the right people. Like, I believe there's no point keep on repeating it in your head, like, oh, when am I going to find the right people? Just focus on yourself. And what I mean by that is focus on developing yourself to the best you can be, and they'll come to you. Because as you develop yourself to the best you can be, it's as weird as it sounds, you're sending out energy to other people. Like this is someone who's actually on it, but it's someone who's developing themselves. And then, as you said, like when someone's honest and has a forthright character, people like that.
I think the point you made about this idealized view of university is brilliant and really like made me think of that, because I thought, and it's like what Neil said earlier, I thought, right, I'm going to go to uni, I'm going to meet my friends for life, I'm going to meet the person I'm going to marry. Everything is just going to be, the people who I'm in a flat with are just going to be my family. This is going to be amazing. I was so excited for that, and I genuinely believed it was going to be like that. It wasn't like that. The day I moved into halls, I turned out I was like a day later than everyone else, and I walked into the kitchen, and people didn't like me. All like they do, like I didn't know what to say, and then I said, "Oh, I'm going to Tesco. Does anyone want anything?" And this guy just said, "Bacon, 4 rashers." I said, "Okay." That was it. That was the whole conversation. I left. I got it for him, and they were really, so it was kind of half of the flat were kind of like hostile to me, and I just didn't fit in with them. There was some weird stuff going on with like class dynamics and stuff in my flat. It was really strange, but I had got there a bit later, just didn't fit in, just wasn't welcome in the clique, and it was very awkward. And then I had been saying my thing, people are just people, people are just people. And then in lectures, I'd been trying to talk to people and make friends. And then I did make this tiny like friendship group. There were 4 of us who were all very, very different. And in any other situation would never have been friends, but would like sit together in lectures. But we really like, again, had nothing in common. We're so different. And then randomly, I ended up making friends with some other people who were in lectures. I met them like on a night out or something, like, and we just like clicked, and they were my friends. And then one day I had to like walk in into the lecture theatre. I had to make the decision to go and sit with them rather than sitting with this old group of friends. And it was so awkward. And I felt like everyone was watching me, but it was the right decision. And I never looked back. And it ended up being fine, because I think with that first group of friends as well, I think we all knew, we just kind of sat together and clung together because we're the only people each other knew. But we all ended up making our own friendship groups and having better, and I'm friends with some of those people. And it was later in the first term, it was like the end of the first term, maybe even the second term, that I made these friends. I think it's the second now I'm thinking about it. But anyway, it was later on that I made these friends. But it's one of those friends I'd say is one of my main like friends that I carry forward from uni. I've probably got 2 proper friends, not every single person I'm still close with, but one of them is that girl who I met on that night out then. So that point about this idealized version of uni is so important, because everyone says that, yeah, you'll meet your friends for life. Well, I met like maybe 1 or 2, but a lot of my friends for life are also my friends from Caerphilly who I went to school with.
They carry over. That's it. Like they're not all going to be the same. Like as you said, you're going to have only a certain number from university. It might not be everyone. It might be everyone. It might be a select few. It's all about not worrying about it. Whoever comes with you comes with you. There's no point obsessing over it at the end of the day.
And being patient, and that's really interesting hearing that, because it mirrors a lot of conversations that I've had with students over the years. And because I speak to a lot of students about these sorts of things when we're having just chats about how stuff's going, and it's about the unfortunate thing is making friends is it's unpredictable. You don't know when it's going to happen. You've got these things of, you can try and plan out when you're going to meet people, or how you're going to meet people, or when it's going to happen. But actually, for a majority of folks, they'll talk about it's just a random occurrence that they'll just happen across someone. They'll happen to have that conversation, and that's what will really spark that off. And you don't necessarily need to be sort of actively looking for that. It will happen. And with this sort of advice, and we'll talk a little bit more maybe about other pieces of advice that we might have for how do you then start conversations, or how do you get into things. But you kind of have to trust in the process that if you follow those things of you're being honest, you're being authentic, you're doing the things that you want to do, you're staying true to your values, and you are still reaching out to people, even though that's risky. As long as you're doing those things, it is inevitable that you will make friends and you will meet people who you can relate to. It's inevitable.
So I believe one important thing is when you're, I suppose, is slightly different now, however, it will go back to normality soon. Like when you're speaking to other people, like when you're listening to them, like I mentioned this earlier. So when you're actually speaking to them, are you present in the moment? Are you actually listening to what they say? Because people can tell when you're not being genuinely interested. They can see it in you, but you're just saying it for the sake of asking it. Like when, for example, would be when you're just talking to someone who's making you coffee and you ask, "How are you?" Most people just say that and then they just brush it off. But when you actually say, "How are you?" and follow up with genuine interest, you can actually connect with that person. Because when you have that interest in not just one person, but everyone, like anyone who you interact with, and you come up with in your head saying, "I'm going to make this the best interaction possible, the best interaction ever," that person will have a great memory of you because you're trying to create value between each other. You're not just brushing that person to the side. When you speak to that person, you're trying to make that person feel as special as possible. And I think, was it, thing I've experienced is that when you're not being genuine with the other person, you're not going to get a genuine interest back. Like it's a very limited response. You're not reciprocating anything positive. Like if you're doing the best you can when you're interacting with yourself, because as mentioned in the podcast earlier, you can take those lessons and put them internally because you're bettering yourself. And when you're bettering yourself, people can see that. They'll be interested in you as well. And then when you keep on talking to each other, you might get a spark there because you're actually curious about each other's lives. You want to know where they're from, what their interests are, who's their family, stuff like that. It's important, I think, a very important thing to be, all round off, to be interested in the people you're interacting with. Don't brush them off. Ask them real questions. Don't ask them generic questions, which you're not going to think about or anything like that. Speak to people like you want to be spoken to at the end of the day.
You reminded me of one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received on being social, which is from a song that I used to listen to on repeat in my first year of uni when I literally just started. And it's a Regina Spektor song. And I can't even, I think it's called The Ghost of Corporate Future, maybe. And the line in the song is, "People are just people. They shouldn't make you nervous." And I used to say that in my head all the time, people are just people, people are just people. And I think that can work in all ways, because when I started uni, I was thinking everyone else knows what they're doing. Everyone else has this together. They probably already all know each other. I would just really got in my head and put everyone else on a pedestal and thought that I was like the odd one out, didn't deserve to be there, imposter syndrome, things like that. But when I would think this, people are just people, it would remind me, no matter how much I think this other person has got it together, they've got insecurities, but also they've got interesting things about them. There are things that matter to them. They've got families, they've had a whole life up to this point, and they might want to talk about that. And yes, I love what you're saying about showing genuine interest. I think part of that is just kind of getting out of your head a bit and just remembering that's another whole human being.
Exactly.
And yeah, there'll be a connection that, if you can find the right thing to ask, you can really build a connection. And that's something I say to myself. Yeah, people are just people.
Just start off with, "Hey, how's your day?" And when they answer that question, pay attention, because they might say just one small little thing, like saying it's not too bad, or say there was this one thing. And when they mention that small little thing, ask questions about it, not to an obsessive level, but be curious, because when people mention something, it's for a reason. At the end of the day, they're projecting their thoughts outside of themselves. Because the way I look at it is, how this word stuck in my head, Rachel, you done well. So how you ruminate over and over. It's not just yourself who does it. Every single person does it. What you're thinking in your head, everyone else is thinking like. So just ask some questions, general questions, what you're curious about, what their interests are, how's your day, how's the work doing? Do you need any help for anything? What do you like doing? Is there anything you're missing right now? For example, activity-wise, Like, do you enjoy sports or anything like that? Because some people who do enjoy sports are very passionate about it. And if you're passionate about the same thing, boom, there's like a common interest. I think that's what's important in finding people to surround yourself with, common interests, because when you have that, you can then go towards that goal together.
I think that's really good advice. And something that I do, which sounds like really bad advice now, maybe it is, I don't know, but something that I do is I'll also just be as authentically myself as possible. I just make it about myself again. But say I'm in a situation and I'm really anxious, I'm like when I was in my first year of uni and I just got there and I felt out of place, or when I've been at like conferences or networking events and things, I will just be honest and talk about how I'm feeling as well and say like, oh my God, I feel so awkward. I don't know where to stand. I don't know. And I'll say that to someone. And sometimes that's kind of quite like disarming because they might be feeling the exact same, but feel like they have to put on the show of acting like they know what they're doing. But sometimes by you showing a bit of vulnerability or just being genuine, that can kind of build a connection, and they will sort of confide in you and say, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing either, and then you can in it together.
And it's so nice because that just kind of like bypasses for me, the thing that if there's one thing that I find difficult in conversation, it's small talk, like the idea of like small talk to get to like the interesting things. So like, I like the interesting discussion. And for me, some people really like small talk. For me, I like to talk about like things and people's opinions on things and how they feel about something, so we can actually like get excited about talking about, and that's where your connections come from. And for me, I find that like small talk, it's quite difficult to really get a sense of that person, and also for me to be excited about something. Someone like talking about just like basic generic things, I find really difficult. So I love it when and conferences are a really good example. But I love it when you have someone who will just start with a conversation starter that you wouldn't otherwise get, that you wouldn't. And I assume at university, it's, if my experience is other things go by, when you start in university, it's always the same sort of things about like, what did you used to study? Where did you come from? What do you do?
Like, I'm going to be honest with everyone here. Okay, when you ask these questions, don't ask questions that no one wants to know the answer to. What I mean by that is, don't say something you don't want to know the answer to. Like, as you just said, what did you study? Like, oh, really? Wow. Have some fun with it. Say stuff that's on your mind. Be yourself, because no one else can be yourself. No one else can say how you say it, if that makes sense. No one else can put those words out there the way you do it. Everyone has their superpower in being themselves, because if everyone was the same, life would be pretty boring, wouldn't it? Life would be pretty boring. So as you mentioned, just be yourself. Like, you don't need to put on the front and imagine. You can, in terms of how you want to go to somewhere in terms of goal wise, but when you want to not act, but be yourself, just be authentic, because people can see through you. They can see if it's true or false in certain scenarios. Like, just be yourself, like say how you'd normally say it.
I think what I'd add to that as well is that, like, you don't need to be everyone's best friend. You don't need everyone in the world to like you. And if you go into social situations being genuine, being yourself, it means that you'll build relationships with people that you actually will care about and who might like you for who you are. So I think that's just like another advantage. It might be, I mean, the reality is that not every single person is going to like me. And if I'm at a conference with all these posh academic people and I go to someone, oh my God, I don't know where to stand, I feel really awkward. Some people might be like, you're a bit weird and not want to interact with me.
It's like, okay, fine.
That's fine, but they're not the right people for me. So I think, don't worry because I think you'll get setbacks sometimes where you'll have a conversation and like it just doesn't click. You're just not for each other. That's fine. Don't worry, move on. And by being yourself, like Daanish says, you'll build more genuine connections as you go along.
I've fluctuated at times. Like, I've changed groups I hang around with because I understood where I needed to go at a point in time. I understood that this isn't serving me well. When I adjusted, like, when you speak to yourself, if the people you're around you are helping you at the end of the day, if they're like supporting you. And if they're not, move forward, because it's your life. You don't have to take anything at the end of the day. You don't have to hang around certain people if you don't want to. You don't have to agree to anything you don't want to. Like, there's no need beating yourself up and saying, yeah, I'm gonna carry on even though I don't want to carry on hanging around with these people. Like, adjust, reflect, because as you do so, you learn that because you're being yourself, you're attracting all these different people. Like, because you're being yourself. Like, think about it this way. If would you rather live a life hanging around with people you don't really particularly want to be around, or would you rather live a life where you're being true to yourself and the people you're around are supporting you as they are true to themselves as well? I think this point lies to your values at the end of the day. Like, understand what your values are, what you hold yourself to, because then through understanding that and through implementing those values, you can then have a clear indication of who you are. You're not wondering about all these different thoughts in your head, like, oh, this person, oh, this person, oh, this person. You know who is supporting you, because when you're, let's say, for example, going towards a goal, there'll be people who are close to you supporting you. Those are the people you want around you because they're uplifting you in a manner.
Daanish, you are speaking to my soul right now.
Yeah.
This is something that I have been through. So I used to feel like I had to hang out with people, certain people, do certain things, especially because, so I've got individual relationships, good individual friendships with my friends from home, from Caerphilly. But when we meet as a group, I just don't fit in and I just don't enjoy it. And the stuff they like doing isn't the stuff I like doing in a group setting. And they have loads of, like, because they're all married, they all have hen parties and things. And I used to feel like I had to go to these hen parties, which I hated. And a part of me thought, oh, I'm socially anxious. That's what's going on. I'm socially anxious about this. But then I actually realized, no, I just really, really don't want to go and I really don't enjoy it. And then it was actually, so Jenna, who we work with, Jenna Pandelli, I don't know if you know her, Daanish, but she said to me once, she was like, just don't go. It's okay to not go and to not want to do something. And, you know, maybe someone else might be offended by that. That's fine. What they think is none of your business. Don't worry. And like Daanish is saying, you're creating a life that you enjoy and that you care about. If you carry on doing the things you don't want to do just because you feel like you should be doing them, it's just going to be more of the same. Whereas what I found is by saying to my friends, look, you know what, and I was honest as well. I was like, I just really don't enjoy hen parties and this kind of thing. I'm not going to come, but if you want to meet with me, like, well, how about we do something one-on-one later? And it's meant that I've been able to, well, other than the pandemic, been able to socialize in a way that I enjoy and that doesn't stress me out and make me miserable. So yeah, thanks, Daanish. You are, like I said, speaking to my soul as always.
You mentioned.
Oh, go on.
No, before you go, quick point. You mentioned you suggested another activity as well, and I think that's important. So suggest something else to do.
I'm going to give you a situation, and the situation is it's the first week of term. Let's say the first week of either the first term or the second term. You walk into a classroom. It's a brand new module, and you realize that you don't know anybody in that classroom. And you realize this just as you're about to open the door, and you feel that kind of physiological feeling. You feel your heart drop a little bit as you realize that you don't actually know anybody there. What do you do?
Okay, so let's break down this scenario. So as you know, as you look in a room, everyone makes eye contact at each other within that split moment. It kind of feels like they're assessing you within that moment. What I do is I just look around and I just look at everyone, and then it sounds weird, but I just find the person I think I would click with the most. So it's kind of like projecting that a little bit out there. I just sit next to them and I'm like, hey, how are you? Like, as we're going to mention later, talk about, hey, how are you? How you been finding it? Like, is it, as you mentioned later on as well, is it weird for you as well right now? Like, have you met anyone? And then from that, within that specific moment, like, do you want to do something later? Just ask a question. Do you want to do something later? Doesn't have to be this massive extravagant thing you thought up of in your head. Just ask them, do you want to do something later? Like, I don't know, it could be anything. Doesn't have to be a ridiculous over top thing. Just get to know the person, say, hey, you free later? Like, don't have anything going on, meeting new people. It's the first week. Just do it. Like, he or she will be in the same situation as well, because it's the first week. No one will know the whole of the campus well, they might somehow, I don't know how, but everyone's in the same position. Don't overcomplicate it. Everyone wants to know more people. And if they're genuine people, which we'll touch upon later, that's even better.
When I heard that question, I was thinking, what would you do? A part of me was thinking, like, I feel like there's the answer of what I'd recommend someone do, and then there's what I would actually do. Because like in real life, what I would do in that situation is I would look around the room, I would look for the seat that's furthest away from anyone else. I would sit there, and then I would look like I'm busy on my phone. I would look like I'm busy doing stuff. And it depends what mood I'm in as well. Like if I'm super anxious, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be like kind of closing myself off, which I feel like is, not what you should do. But if I was feeling a bit more brave, and what I think is a good thing to do is what Daanish said. And like I said, just sitting next to someone. And the thing that has worked for me when I have done it is, again, just being honest. And I'd say to them, I don't know anyone here. Like, do you know anyone? Did we have any preparation to do? I haven't done anything. Like, I feel really nervous. Like, have you had any sessions before this? Like, just asking questions, being authentic. If you're anxious, be anxious. If you're not anxious, don't worry. Don't pretend to be anxious if you're not. But if you are, just doing that. And I find just saying something and opening it up is better than saying nothing. And I remember reading like a study before about, again, it's this pre-pandemic times, but about whether you talk to the person next to you on a train. And if you talk to the person next to you, but even though no one wants to do it, but both people leave happier. So overcoming that awkward obstacle actually makes both people happier. And the first thing you say doesn't really matter. You might say something absolutely stupid and embarrassing, and in your head you'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. What a weird thing to say. That was stupid. But the other person will forget probably. Have you heard of the spotlight effect? Which happens online, which is so weird. It's happening right now because in our lives, we think all the attention's on us, and we're so self-aware, and we notice if we've got like some sauce on our top, or if we say something stupid, we are the center of our own lives, and we act like all the attention's on there. But everyone else has got the attention on themselves. And I think it's always weird in like Zoom or something, because it actually literally spotlights me. So I'm more aware of myself. But in that seminar, you are there thinking about yourself and how everyone thinks of you and about the stupid things you're saying. But everyone else is just too busy thinking about themselves. So if you say the wrong thing, or you say something weird that starts off the conversation, don't worry, because you can only move forward from there. If you do what I said at the beginning and you like shut off and you're silent, nothing's going to progress. Whereas if you take a risk, if you say something, even if it's embarrassing and it goes wrong, you can go somewhere from it. And they will probably just be glad that someone started a conversation. I always am. If someone ever talks to me in that situation, I'm like, phew, great, go somewhere.
All right then, everybody. Well, this has been, as ever, such a nice exploration of these points about being social, about being sociable, about questioning the romanticized understanding of university and the romanticized understanding of making friends. And actually what we keep on centering back around to is this idea of knowing yourself, knowing who you are, and that if you're able to do that, that will inevitably make people gravitate toward you. And you've just got to be patient with that and trust in the process. As long as you know who you are and as long as you're true to yourself, actually it can't not work. Which is what a positive message.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Anything else to add? Any final thoughts, final points?
I feel like we've covered everything. I believe so. What do you think, Rachel? We all good? We all square?
I just think my final point is also, maybe you won't have many friends, and that's okay. You don't need a million friends. I don't have that many friends now as an adult, and it is fine. So, and different people socialize in different ways. Some people have massive circles of loads of acquaintances and things. Some people just have one best friend. Some people, most of my time, my social interactions, most of them are with my family, and I'm super, super close to my family. And that's something that when I was younger, like when I was in uni, I thought, oh, it's not cool how much time I like to spend with my family, and like that I'm gonna like ditch my friends to hang out with my family, and it felt not cool, but it's fine, family counts as well. And yeah,
Right.
like I said, maybe you've got one best friend, maybe you've got a million friends, everyone's different. It's fine.
As ever, comparison is not our friend. Comparison to what we think we should be doing and what we think is normal very, very, very rarely helps us move forward. And actually, what is normal is whatever feels good to you at that particular time. And those things will fluctuate. And at particular points, you might have a massive friendship group and you might really crave that. And then that might shrink down and that might grow again. That's fine. It doesn't have to be a one best way or a one right answer to it. It can shift.
100%. It shifts. It won't stay the same forever. It will change as you change. It's not going to stay at the same number since the day you were born, right? If it did, I'd be impressed, but that's not the case. Okay, it changes. And understand that as you change, you're going to hang around different people because that's where your natural nature lies. It's not going to be where you were potentially 5 years ago. It's going to change. And as you change, the people you hang around with will change. It's natural.
On that beautiful note, let's say goodbye to each other for another week. It is great to see you, and have a peaceful, relaxing week, everybody.
Beautiful.
See ya.
That's the way to go.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.